What is propaganda? Propaganda is supposed to make you feel good and get you to either support something, believe something, and or give them your money. I've found that you can arguably say that most things with propaganda want your money. A lot of people talk about LGBT propaganda and how they're marketing to kids. A lot of people in the LGBT community are offended by that. They're like, it's not propaganda, we just want you to love yourself. But some of that propaganda involves changing yourself medically. And that is effective marketing. To be convinced, you have to change physically to be accepted. And they'll say, no, you don't need to change yourself to be accepted. However, you are pressured in the community. Both my husband, when he was trans, and I, when I was trans, both of us were constantly asked when we were starting hormones, when we were getting the surgery, and I also found myself asking people if they'd been trans for longer than 2 years and out, why didn't they want hormones? Why did I think they needed hormones? Because according to the same community, you don't have to look any kind of way to be anything. It's about how you feel inside. So why do you need surgery? Oh, but you don't need surgery. Anecdotally, you do. I came out as a trans man in 2011. I didn't start hormones until like 2016. I wanted to be sure I was sure. And apparently I wasn't. But still, I waited 5 years to start. In therapy. There wasn't a lot of knowledge on the trans community. I found the propaganda online. And most of the first couple years was me explaining what being trans was. And it was hard to explain what it was, because it sounded like I was explaining a new science. And I totally just exploited the existence of intersex people. I'd say, you know how some people are born with mixed genitals, like an out and an in? Well, my brain developed one way, and my body developed a different way. And that's how I'd explain it. And I didn't have a lot of science to back this up. But I was sure it was coming. I knew studies were being conducted all the time. I never saw the end of these studies. And I'd follow up. This one would stop for that one would stop for that. No matter what, they all seemed to keep getting canceled. And I was like, oh, transphobia strikes again. But then it was getting suspicious. You know, by 2017, 2018, could they really block that many studies proving trans people were real? And I'd be like, oh, well, why haven't they proven they're not? Well, a couple of those studies did come out. They investigated the nature versus nurture, and a lot of it has to do with around the time you were 18 months to 2.5 years old. Was your opposite sex parent around a lot? Was your relationship kind of beefy? Think about it. But it was before I saw the studies that I detransitioned. You see, I was an advocate. I did volunteer work for Cal and Lord in New York City. They probably still got my video playing in the waiting room. I did so much outreach for my local community. Man, I planned I was on all the pride committees. For years, I truly, truly advocated for this community. I found a home in it, but I didn't find myself in it. And that was something the whole community could relate to. We all felt lost. We all felt lonely. And we all smoked cigarettes. Not all. Some vaped. It was just smoke, sex, and depression. And drinking, but I don't drink. I never did. I'm not an alcoholic, but I didn't want to be. It's possible to be in the community without drinking. As people in the non-binary community started coming out more, I found myself feeling a bit confused. I'd always told myself, as an effeminate man, it was okay to be that way. I'd never tell a little boy he couldn't like this or that. I'd never tell a little boy he couldn't dress a certain way. Peter Pan wore leggings. If I wanted to wear leggings, it was okay. And I'd have these arguments with myself all the time. I had to convince myself that it was okay because any man can like anything. And then they're telling me, oh no, you're just non-binary, probably. I'm not telling you how to feel, but you're probably non-binary. And it was like a way to baby step, either in or out of the community. People would be trans, then non-binary, then detransition, or they'd be cis, then non-binary, then trans, there and back again. And that's not why it was invented. This is genuinely someone's way of expressing themselves and understanding themselves. But I'd be really curious to see the actual statistics of their relationships with their families. Do they have a father figure and a mother figure in their lives? Doesn't have to be biological parents, but just role models. Me and my dad had beef. Me and my mom had beef. I was bisexual, trans, and eventually non-binary. And then I found myself wanting to be pregnant. And it was very hard to find a doctor that was okay with that, or had any experience with that, even in San Francisco. And I had to think about why that was, and why that mattered to me. Seahorse dads have been a thing the whole time. Non-binary parents exist. And then I started thinking about, oh, do I raise my kids cis, or do I raise them non-binary? And then I had to think about what that experience would be for a non-binary child. That non-binary child, as someone who worked daycare and was a teacher for a long time, I can tell you, if that kid's going to daycare, every single teacher is going to want to take that kid to the bathroom and be the one who finds out. And then they'll tell people. They're going to be curious. They're going to want to know. And there's going to be confirmation bias. And you want to know what else? Every single non-binary child I've met was assigned male at birth. Isn't that strange? Is it because tomboys are already a thing? And I've met a trans kid. I had a trans student. And And I was supportive of this trans student. I defended them in front of other teachers. I was required to ask that kid, "Are you a girl or a boy today?" And on only 3 occasions, after weekends with mom, did this kid ever say female. And the kid was only 5. But also, mom was never around. This little girl was with dad all the time. And after those weekends with mom, this kid was always depressed. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the beef is. All I knew is when that kid walked into the room and make them feel at home. And that's what my boss told me to do. But today, I'd probably talk to the mom and the dad more than I did. Because I don't know how aware they were of all the teachers in the building talking about this kid's gender. And this was back in 2016. Okay, this isn't even in the last decade almost. This isn't that new. But it has exploded. And I really think we gotta leave kids out of it. I don't know. I think about that kid all the time. And I think about what I'd do different. And I think about how today I would have lost my job. But I wasn't the only one. There was a whole bunch of us advocating for this kid, thinking, man, this kid is the future. But for all I know, this kid just needed therapy. And that's what should have happened. This kid should have been in therapy. And if she also wanted to play pretend after, sure. That's fine. But only if it was being used to process something and not just escape. Why do these kids not want to be themselves? Why do these kids want to hear a different name when they're called? What's happening when their name is called? What is the pressure that's coming with the girl wearing the dress? What is the pressure with the boy being tough? I don't think it's about the sex or the gender. I think it's about the expectations being put on these kids. And it's the escapism. It's the role play. These kids need a break from being themselves. And my break was almost 15 years. Some are longer, some are shorter. Some are for the rest of their lives. I've never met a queer person that didn't have trauma. And yes, queer community, I have met people without trauma outside of the community. And yeah, they are weird, but they're not 1 in a million. They had loving families. They had happy childhoods. In fact, their trauma may have been when they entered the world and found it wasn't so comforting. Maybe going to college was their trauma. And I'm sorry that your life was hard. I'm sorry that your childhood was scary. I'm sorry there were expectations put on you that shouldn't have been there. But we really gotta leave the kids out of it. No child should have adults playing guess what's in their pants. No child should have to be exposed to politics they don't have an opinion formed on yet. Especially not if it's optional. Some kids are just political when they walk out the door. Why are you putting that on your kid? Why do they need that? I'm a Christian, so I believe that people are made the way they're meant to be made. That your DNA inside you was written. And that is who you're meant to be. You just have to figure out who that is. Medication is for lifelong issues, like heart conditions, or autoimmune disorders, or cancer. Life-threatening physical stuff. Your lack of acceptance of yourself, as written, does not require surgery. It requires love. And I'm sorry you didn't feel that before you entered the doctor's office. And that doctor lied to you. You don't need to change to be happy. And kids don't need to decide who they are so early on in life. They're figuring themselves out. But they need something to start with. Kids need stereotypes to know what they're not. You need to know the rules before you bend them. Boys can like girl stuff. Girls can like boy stuff. But that doesn't make the boys girls or the girls boys. It just makes it people who like stuff. Segregation of gender keeps people safe and keeps bathrooms clean, or not, if you're in the men's room. The women's room is cleaner because there's blood in it all the time. That's why it's cleaned more. It's not just that men are gross. I promise it's not deeper than that. It's not political. Let kids be kids. Let a girl revel in ladies first getting into a car. Let a boy be brave protecting a girl. Yeah, it's cliche. And boys need protecting too. Men are not better. Women are not better. We're all people. And we all have our place. And they're good places. And you don't even have to subscribe to it. You can be a rough and tough girl. You can be a gentle man. But you need somewhere to start as a kid. And the people who love you should help you grow and love yourself. And I'm sorry they didn't for you. As for the propaganda, where do they want your money to go? Is it surgery? No. It's where they don't want your money to go. They don't want it to go to the church. They don't want the money to go to people who want to help LGBT people love themselves. Have you ever met more than 1 or 2 queer monogamous couples that lasted over a decade together? How about over 5 years? The record I saw was 8. Any couple I knew longer than that, they spent a lot of time as long-distance partners. I'm not saying you can't be happy in the LGBT community. I'm saying it should be an adult's choice, and that science is showing it's preventable, and for some people, curable. Not conversion therapy, but real therapy. Science says that some people are more predisposed than others, but that the nature is not as big of a deal as the nurture. And that's the science. That's not just me being some homophobe, or transphobe, or biphobe. I'm saying follow the science, read the studies, Make sure you pay attention to the size number of the group studies. And be confident that if the science was there, with several large group studies, we would have known by now that it was nature and not nurture. We would have found the gene code. You would have found out on 23andMe if you were bisexual, or had a tendency to be, or a predisposition to be. But the truth is, it's psychological. For example, a young man whose father was absent a lot in his toddler years and early childhood years, that kid would have a hard time finding a familiarity and connection with people in his sex group. They would be foreign, mysterious, enticing. That's the foundational science. Obviously not every kid, but it matched up to a lot of my friends, matched up to my partner, and you. What's that relationship like? Was there security there? Safety? Were they really a role model? God had a design, or science, or whatever you believe. Male, female, baby. But even the penguins divorced, guys. They got beef. They couldn't even stay together long term. They helped raise the egg, but after the purpose was gone, the shared purpose, they couldn't make it work. Most elderly gay men I know had many partners over the years. And I grew up in New York. If anyone was going to find them, it would be me. And they'd always laugh about, oh yeah, the third husband. That's when you know you got it. And with the old lesbians, they'd all been abused. No one abuses like a girl on a girl. Let me tell you, those are always the most brutal stories. There's just a lot more boring drama in straight couples most of the time. On a day-to-day basis, anyway. Obviously, there's outliers, but we got the numbers for it over here. I guess the end of this, I want to wrap up and just say, leave the kids out of it. If they want to explore and go down that path as an adult, that's up to them. Just give them a good foundation. A good, normal, boring foundation. That's all a kid needs. Play in the mud, go to grandma's house, eat snacks, play outside, and not think too hard. Find out who they are accidentally. Not as a mission, naturally. Give them a natural childhood. God bless you. Have a good day. You are beautifully made.